Hello and welcome. This is Modern American Gangster, and this is Behind the Desk segment. I've been getting a lot of questions lately with the Epstein stuff and the Trump stuff, so I got about 25 questions here. I'm going to go through these questions and I am going to try to answer them as best I can. So let's get into it. Number one question on here is, what is one Epstein related detail from 2025 2026 file drop that actually made you pause and rethink who runs things? Well, a lot of the interesting stuff is how Epstein's tied to all these people. And the biggest name that's come out is how he is an ambassador or some type of connection to the Rothschild family. And if you know anything about our past history, Hitler and all these people were said to be agents of the Rothschild family. And the family is big. I know the first thing that Hitler did was shut down the Rothschild banks, but that's all a deception because of kind of what we've learned in the past and the events that happened directly after World War II. So, on top of the who really runs the world, the people masquerading as humans are these supposed lizard people, and that's who these 13 Illuminati families are in direct communication with. Excuse me. So, I think that's a very interesting thing. The biggest thing is the child sacrifice and the blood aspect to all these rituals that they are involved in, and that connects to the energy life spark of people who are born in the image of God. And everyone has the ability to choose to be a Christian or not. It's a free will choice. And the more you look into these rituals and things, they make you do the absolute darkest, most evil thing imaginable so that God's connection with you is gone. So God will fully turn his back on a person who is doing this Pizzagate kind of stuff. And therefore, the demons can then move in and inhabit you. And that's what you're going to find coming in the days and weeks following the Epstein files and all this kind of stuff, is how everything connects to these aliens and demons or whatever you want to call them, but it most likely is demonic entities. So you don't draw a pentagram on the floor and torture people to contact aliens. All right, it's all demonic entities, 100%, and we see that time and time again. So I hope that answered that question. Deep state versus globalist cabal. Which one do you think has more real pull in 2026 America, and why? Well, they're kind of both the same thing. The deep state in America is ran by organizations like APAC, things like that. So it's a very big indicator that the same people pulling the streams in the globalist cabal are the same people pulling the strings behind the deep state, which is always an Israel Jewish connection. Whether it's, you look at how Ukraine and Zelensky goes to the White House just about as much as Benjamin Netanyahu. So it's all a Jewish centered cabal because of the gods that these Jews pray to, which are the satanic Luciferians, if you will. They're all doing the same rituals and they all are united under the same symbols and symbolism. So it's very interesting to understand how it's us versus them, and it doesn't matter if you're in America or if you're in Canada or if you're in Europe somewhere. It's the same shadowy Illuminati, Freemason, Masonic type system that governs all of us. So I think it's both. I think the globalist cabal is what we're trying to get away from with the things like the World Health Organization and the United Nations and things like that. So for everything we do, especially with the tariffs, if the tariffs are going to help us, is going to remove us from this globalist new world order agenda unless we're all getting played, which that is a possibility we have to accept. All right, number four. This says number four, but it's really number three. What's the most underrated conspiracy that is quietly played out right now, i.e., something beyond the obvious Epstein and election stuff? The most underrated conspiracy, I think, in my understanding, is the mud fossils. I think the mud fossils are going to unite everything together. And once you kind of figure out how the mud fossils work, how things become fossilized, it's going to then prove all these other kind of conspiracies as factual. When you understand the size and the scale of some of these mud fossilized creatures and the giant titan people, that kind of proves that it's a flat earth, if you will, because if you start talking about trees that are miles tall, these biblical trees, and biblical sized titan creatures, it kind of disproves the globe and all these other things and gives you an idea of kind of the recreation of man after these events took place. So mud fossils is really kind of what really got me going into all this, was trying to prove that the mud fossils are not real and then having it being proved to you. And that's kind of how everything works, is you try to disprove flat earth by looking into the globe and all that stuff. And the more you look into proving it as not real, the more validation it gets and the more proven it is. So that's a very interesting one that I like to kind of investigate on my own in my own little mud fossil corner of the world, is looking into that, understanding the transition metals and how everything we have comes from these transition metals, because it all connects to God's creation. So, number four, if MK Ultra never really ended, what is the modern version guys in your circle suspect is being run on the population? Well, I think that has a lot to do with the Wi-Fi signals. The Wi-Fi signals can be subliminally programming you, as well as sort of the signals coming out of the cell phones and stuff like that. Now, whether that's the 5G or the Wi Fi routers, I think along with the vaccines and the sort of the constant programming that we're under by all these foreign actors, whether it's the Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes or whoever it is, they're the ones who are instilling the programming that is aided by the radio frequency weapon. So certain shows, certain streamers, certain people, they might have some kind of white noise in the background that makes you more susceptible to programming, and therefore they can program you directly from these types of signals. And this all connects with the chemtrails, the processed food, and all that kind of stuff, how it all kind of ties together into the larger conspiracy of keeping the people obedient workers, keeping them subservient to this elite class of controllers, whether it be lizard people or gray aliens or the Vril or whatever it is. But most of these people who are taking these advertising dollars are a direct part of that, because every time somebody gets a big deal, they build them a studio or they rent them out a studio. And within those studio facilities, that's where they play the white noise to get people to lose their cognitive reasoning skills, and it makes them more susceptible to the programming. Okay, number five, chemtrails, 5G towers, or mRNA tech? Which one do you see as the most plausible vector for large scale control in 2026? Definitely all of the above, because these systems all work together. The chemtrails, the 5G, and the mRNA, if you've seen my video on the 5G death towers, the mRNA, all these three systems work together for the larger operation of the system, if you will. So the chemtrails and the 5G and all this stuff, everything's working in conjunction with this larger operation. Now, the end game of that could be the fucking Project Bluebeam, and this is where they put the chemicals in the air, the reflective particles, the 5G towers broadcast and bounce signals off of the particles, which cause the turns the sky into like a giant TV screen, and that's how they'll project these images. Now, how the mRNA hooks in with that is the mRNA, if the people have these nano robots inside them and all this stuff, the programming's all going to kick off at the same time. So it's like a demonic interface where, when the time is right, every signal and programming is activated. This would activate the spores of the Marburg. People are going crazy and violent, and it's just complete chaos as the giant UFOs are decloaking. The UFOs will always appear translucent, as if they're semi-cloaked, which, if you're aliens from another galaxy and you're doing a full-scale invasion, why would you be cloaking yourself? You know, it's like if the Independence Day movie's happening and you can't see the UFOs but everything's blowing up. They have to have some kind of something that you're visualizing on to explain the madness of the people. But the madness of the people, it's contained within them through the vaccines and this mRNA technology. So watch my video on the 5G death towers and all that stuff. It'll explain all this a lot better than I just did on that. Okay, number 6. Best piece of fringe evidence, doc leak, whistleblower that convinces you something was more than just a theory. I would think back to the mud fossils. You know, everything happens for a reason, and it happens when it's supposed to happen. So, like, right at the perfect time, I found the Roger Spur Mud Fossil University page. And through that and the electron flood stuff, you know, it was just right at the right time. It suggested it for me in the algorithms. And the DNA testing of the blood inside of the rocks was a real game changer, because then I went out and said, if that's true, you should be able to find evidence that rocks were once part of creatures or once living. And then I went out and went through and just started looking and found all this crazy evidence. So it's a big piece of the larger puzzle that is proven and can be proven very easily, but the science and the academia and stuff like that know that if you prove this mud flood, mud fossils, and all this stuff about geology, they're out of work big time. And especially when we get more AI, the AI is going to put all of these people out of business for sure. And, you know, you're not going to be able to get a grant to go dig up dinosaur bones when you can find them anywhere. And it's just the reality and the perception change of people is what voids all of the arguments that we have been told throughout our existence and our research on this planet, if that makes sense. Okay, number 7. How has the 2024-2026 Trump term shifted your views on whether the deep state is real or a coordinated entity or just competing factions? Well, this could be, it's like, is Trump really ran by Israel and the Mossad and all this Epstein blackmail, or is there a military operation underway to stop all this? So my nose is running because it's super cold out here. Excuse me. I would say I don't know. Sometimes I think this is all fucking fake, and Trump's we've been played with all this QAnon shit, and then some days it seems like any minute they could activate this EBS and all this shit could go live. Because if you're looking at this in terms of history, I'm really into looking up history. If you know about the What Really Happened book, history cannot be written. What's happening right now cannot be written for 10 years. There's so much muddied water with all of these conspiracy theories and all this stuff. It's going to take 10 years before we really understand what happened in the past to write it down going forward. The same way everything with the Nazis and World War II, at the time it was X, Y, and Z, and now you look back and it was completely different shit going on altogether. The same with everything else. You can't write the past today. You have to write the past in a couple years looking back at what really happened. So after the dust settles, you can have a better understanding of what's going on. Truly, I do think there is some type of military operation going on. Even if it's not Trump and QAnon or something, there is some type of presence that is working against the satanic aspects of reality, if that makes sense. So God works in mysterious ways, and I do think some of us are being protected. I think I'm being protected and set aside for a very specific reason. And maybe that is for when the population turns to a certain point and they need someone to explain this to them. And I'm really good at explaining all this, laying it all out to where if you don't know anything that's going on, looking at my research, looking at my information, and you taking it into your own power and looking up what I've looked up and double checking my work. That's the number one thing I never get is people double checking my work. They'll tell you you're wrong and then rely on someone else's research to prove you wrong, not what they've actually looked into. And for me, it's just like I looked into everything. Okay, I've looked into all the conspiracy theories. I've looked into everything back when there wasn't all these conspiracy theories. When I started doing this, it was like the JFK assassination and 9/11. But the really fringe stuff was like David Icke and the Phil Schneider deep underground bases people, and all these things that were so far out there, nobody wanted to touch it. But if you go back and look at what Phil Schneider said in 1996, it all checks out today 100%. And he called out adrenochrome and these demons that live under the ground and all this crazy shit. And this is why people today are, if you're getting brought into the world of conspiracies and conspiracy theories, there's going to be so many things that you're going to have missed, which that's where all of the important data is. And I think that's just a main factor in understanding everything. You have to know everything to know anything. And to have any real expertise, there's so many subcategories you need. And that is why it takes a long time for people to wake up, because you've been indoctrinated from first grade to 12th grade. Your entire adolescence into young adulthood is being propagated with this fake false information. And that amount of time, 12 years of study, it takes to reverse all this programming and relearn all aspects of all civilization. And It is hard, but you have to do it because otherwise you're just living in a world of complete lies controlled by these people who behind the scenes are doing all the stuff that we call out, and they aren't hiding that they're doing it. It's just hidden to the NPC general public type people. Okay, number 8. If you could force one historical conspiracy, JFK, RFK, MLK, 9/11, etc., to be fully declassified tomorrow, which one and why? Definitely, I would think all the Tartaria stuff. Because if you look into Masonic documents and old documents, there are CIA documents, all these documents talking about the concealment of the Tartars, concealment of Tartaria, and all this stuff. And why is that so important? Because it automatically leads to God and the millennial reign of Jesus Christ and how we are in this complete satanic realm and trying to wake up as many people as we can. So that's something they'll tell you it's a real thing, but they'll never tell you how deep it goes. And also, like, where did all these Tartarian people go? What happened? What caused this mud flood? And the things like that that we are looking into. So I would think if they were going to do anything towards the betterment of mankind, it would be the release of the Tartarian files, the old world, flat Earth, because that all kind of it all ties together when you understand it. So number nine. What's the line between healthy skepticism and getting lost in a rabbit hole for someone trying to stay sharp in the streets? Okay, definitely. If you're going down any rabbit hole, it's a good idea to shift gears from time to time. So if you're just going down the 9/11 rabbit hole, you need to stop and go into some other conspiracy theory. Now, that might not make sense at first, but in the long run, you'll find that every single conspiracy tie together into a larger whole of the deception. So if you're too into 9/11, you need to get out of 9/11 and you need to go to something else. You know, the Kandahar giant in Afghanistan. What were they doing in Afghanistan? What was the point of the 9/11? When 9/11 leads to Building 7 and what was in Building 7 that they destroyed, start looking into that and it will take you to something else. The Oklahoma City bombing, for example. Or, now they're saying that Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was targeting all these Epstein people. So it's like, if you are only into the JFK assassination, you're never going to discover the truth. You have to go down every single rabbit hole and look at every conspiracy to have a wider understanding of who is the same people who are behind JFK are the same people behind 9/11, and the same people behind 9/11 are the same people covering up the lizard people and the underground bases and stuff like that. So, big piece of advice is don't get too lost down one road because all roads seem to go out and go around to the same exact spot. Would be a good piece of advice. Okay, I'm going to do one more and then take a quick break. Pizzagate, adrenochrome, elite ritual stuff. Where do you land on how much of that is real and versus disinfo to muddy the waters? Well, I've looked at everything and it is real. And it's Israel. There's a pun there, but all this Pizzagate shit is real when you understand that there is a non-human aspect to these operations. And I also think, like, if you've seen the Eyes Wide Shut with Stanley Kubrick, the big mystery is what did they edit out of that movie. And I can tell you, when the Tom Cruise character is walking through the mansion party and everyone's having an orgy and stuff, the scenes that were cut are most likely the scenes that indicate child pedophilia. I would say scenes that were cut alluding to bestiality, scenes that were cut alluding to necrophilia, having sex with dead bodies and shit like that. And I would also imagine entities drinking blood, human sacrifice. You know, you just think he's walking through this mansion and all these rooms, looking at all these rooms with his mask on. What would have been in the background of those secret bedrooms and stuff like that? Because they're always doing satanic ritual. This all goes with the Diddy parties and stuff. The longer you're at the Diddy party, the more disgusting shit you're going to see. And it always ties into the most evil stuff you can do, because the goal is you have to be compromised to the point where God and Jesus Christ turns his back on you. And once that happens, God's light, magnetic creation force is gone out of you, and these demons can fully inhabit you. So, as long as there's any hope, you might change your mind and double back against these people. They're gonna demand you do more. You're going to do so many things. There is absolutely, it would take numerous lifetimes to pay off what you've done with these evil rituals and things like that. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back.